interesting times. I'm organizing my 40th birthday, so I'm a little bit
amazing
in a funny, very sentimental state of mind, in a positive way. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I turned 30 last year, and I remember that feeling pretty big. I mean, maybe even bigger than, like 21 or something. And it's weird when you have time, like 10 years in between, different 10 years doesn't seem like it would be a lot of time, right? But it's like once you're looking back on it, I mean, how are you feeling now that you're almost 40 compared to when you were 30?
I feel like, in a weird way, I don't feel like much more grown up in a way, which is not a problem, I guess. But maybe it's also connected to all the things that I did the past months, like thinking about a Madonna concert in particular, where you see this icon performing all these songs that are really like part of your life since you're born. Like, it's 40 years of Madonna and liking her music, and my siblings liking her music and growing up with it from the early beginning. So I was like very touched. I don't know. One part was the queer part and the gay part, and the outing part in a way, and the freedom that she's reflecting. And the other part was definitely like all these moments that those songs are marking in my life, that I'm thinking, fuck. And when this song came out, I remember it was such a moment for me. And when that song came out, I was super young, and I still, like, I didn't understand English, but I still felt the freedom in that song. And so it's quite interesting to reflect on all that and think back and bringing back memories back of all those years. But it definitely doesn't feel bad or negative to turn older. It's more like a realization of understanding that I'm actually considered grown up in society now, and I'm not sure if I feel like that.
I think that's incredible. I love hearing about Madonna. I think there's something about creatives, maybe like yourself and myself, where there's a part of you that, because so much of what we do requires play, even if there's a lot of discipline around it, I think maybe that sense of play, and if you're creative, you also have like this sense of wonder about the world. Some of these things are needed for what we do, and maybe that kind of goes against growing older in a way, like at least with how we feel within ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like it's nothing that you can really plan. It's quite interesting how often in my job I heard the question, how can I follow this path that you had, or how can I get into the job that you have, and quite frankly, there's no answer for me, because I literally didn't even study anything connected to design, fashion, or anything creative. It was almost the opposite. In geography, it was more like, of course, connecting the dots and putting patterns together and figuring out trends, even though it was different trends than fashion trends. But like you say, it's definitely interesting to think about, how you have to play and fool around and try new things and be open to it and not be scared. It's super interesting, and I'm like, these days, like I just mentioned, I'm like reflecting so much on it, how I got where I am, and not even. I mean, I'm super grateful for that I can do the job that I do, but even as a person, in the environment that I grew up, and also looking at my younger brother now, for example, he's 10 years younger than me, and it's not easy to be young these days. I feel like it was a privilege to grow up without social media and without too many influences of showing how your life could be in a so-called, or these days so desired, world of influence and followers, and it's very, very poisonous somehow how people are reflecting, and many young people are reflecting on their lives, on what is success and what does success mean in terms of perception and how you have to look like and so on. So it's a very interesting thing that you say, because not growing up in this structure, or not in kind of a set up path that someone thought of you about, and think about parents or your environment, and just going with the flow and see and being lucky at times, but also being consistent with what you do is very interesting to think about how things ended up with myself, but also seeing how it maybe not ends up with people around me.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up in Austria and hearing, was Madonna kind of, when you look back on influence in your life, at least within like an art form, I guess, was Madonna kind of like what opened up the door for you into like a whole new world?
Good question. I think the one person that I very, very often think about, or there's actually three people, I remember very much my mother commenting or talking with me about that. I saw RuPaul on TV. We only had two TV channels in Austria back then, and there was one particular hour a week where music videos would be played, and it was not MTV. It was like the Austrian channel, and they would play the newest hits. And then there was Elton John and RuPaul with a "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" video, and I remember so well that I just thought this was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And also interesting second thing that I also remember is Tina Turner. Me commenting on how incredibly cool Tina Turner was, and what the energy around her and her looks and her big hair. And I was so amazed by that as a young boy. That also remember that my mother told me about Tina Turner, and even like now, decades forward, and I grew up in a very white society. We didn't have any people of color around us, and it was very white, very uninspiring in that sense. And also thinking back that it was not a topic to talk about the skin color, which was very beautiful to think about, because it was not really aware. Like, also, I didn't grow up in a very, like, let's say, cultural loaded family or surrounding, but I'm very, very happy about that was never a topic, or was not a topic, and it was just about that, how incredibly inspiring RuPaul and Tina Turner was for me as a boy. And not even that my mother would have mentioned that RuPaul, and maybe she also didn't know that RuPaul was not a woman, but and that's those two people that I always felt like very empowered by, and the energy. And I mean, you can also hear my way of talking is very monotone. I'm considered like a woodman by my husband also, that I'm very, I don't know, it's a lot about my personality, that I'm never like super joyous. I think I'm a very humorous person, and I like jokes and I like to entertain, but it's very dry, and everything comes very dry. But I do think that seeing someone like RuPaul or Tina Turner was always something that inspired me to be a little bit more outgoing and a little bit more showing personality. And same story, and that's when I end now with this monologue, was with Mariah Carey. So my sister always listened to Mariah Carey, and same story, without knowing what Hero, what the lyrics of Hero meant and so on. It's so interesting to think back, being maybe, I think I was like 6-7 years old or so, hanging out in my sister's room, and she would like braid or comb my hair, and we would listen to Mariah Carey, and it's quite, yeah, it's so interesting to feel the sensibility around me as a boy already, that my sister recognized and thought was cute. And then, yeah, here we go, like 35 years later, I'm still listening to Mariah Carey, and I still get like goosebumps with certain songs that I heard as a kid without knowing the lyrics, but now I understand the lyrics, and it's very, very touching to know that music can touch you in a way like this without that you know what they're singing about.
Yeah, there's so many interesting things that I see about sound and words and how, you know, it actually changes your environment. You know, how even speaking words of positivity to your plants, you know, changes the physiology of the plant itself. But I always felt a strong connection to music. And even now, I mean, I'm not surprised that you hearing, you know, American music, English music, and not understanding it, but still feeling drawn to it, because, you know, sometimes I might hear a song from, you know, Brian Eno, or like something that doesn't even have words, you know, and it can make me emotional, you know, and so
Totally.
It's there's something about that form that just like speaks to you at like a deeper level than you can understand.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, it's really amazing. And like even now in terms of like brand new music, going to see Beyonce with her Renaissance tour, and I've seen her with Jay-Z a few years ago, and it was quite like more like R&B and a little bit more straight, like literally, and a little bit more hard. And then a few years later, you see Beyonce with her Renaissance tour, and it was like the most queer, most diverse bunch of people I've seen on one spot, and it was so incredibly touching also to see this mega star embracing queerness and diversity in an entertaining show that I think touched like so many people's lives now, if you're queer or not queer, but like just about diversity and body inclusivity, and everyone just felt so fucking free. And you know, and now I saw even the movie about that tour that we saw, and I was like completely amazed and wondering how something like this can exist, and it touches millions and millions of people, but at the same time we still don't manage in the world to kind of see each other as different people, and kind of manage to live next to each other in many ways. But that's a little bit the sad part about it, that I'm always wondering that since maybe 20 years, I always thought that the internet and the connectivity between people and the travel is gonna melt us together in all cultures and religions, but somehow right now it seems like it's the opposite. But that was now a very negative bow, but and boomerang that came back. But yeah.
Did you have a strong relationship to your mother? And I guess I'm thinking about that because the people that you've mentioned that kind of opened up your world are all different, but they're very like strong female characters, whether or not they are in their personal life, at least like through their art form, you know, they give out a lot of strength. Is that something you kind of connect to the women in your life?
That's a very sensitive and very good question that you sense that. 100%. I grew up without a father, so my father died when I was 1 year old, And then we were the kids, and my mother was kind of left alone with us, even though there was a big family, but things were quite conservative, and so it didn't really feel easy, I guess, back then. Also to then later on have a new boyfriend and so on, it all felt a little bit very, very old school. But long story short, my mother did a lot of hustling through life, doing shitty jobs to keep us afloat, and always being the tough one for sure. She also never spoke about when she was sick or when she didn't feel well. It was definitely like let's say a role model, or someone that we could rely on, that she's hustling through life to make things work. Unfortunately, also she died of cancer a few years ago now, and you'd still feel that gap of like someone that really keeps everyone together and is like, always playing along, being happy, trying to keep shit together, even though it's not hard. And that is also super interesting to think about, because she was like in a very, very, very late stage of cancer when I found out. I basically kind of diagnosed her on the telephone, because I was on the phone with her quite often since I moved away when I was 18, and tried to, of course, keep that single mom and that mom always a little bit entertained and updated what life brings. And especially me then moving away, being gay, there was a lot of stuff to figure out. But I basically had to kind of diagnose it, because he was talking weird stuff on the phone, and I immediately kind of collapsed and started crying, because I knew that was something completely off, because she would never like mix up words in that weird way. And I was like, okay, you stay where you are. There's something completely off with you, because I didn't know either I didn't know. I thought maybe she's drunk, but it almost like I knew that there was either a stroke or whatever. Yeah, and turns out then when she was in the hospital, when my siblings brought her there, turns out that literally she had like 2 big tumors in her brain, and she kind of thought it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. There was like a lot of aspirin and like headache pills, and she probably thought, I'm going to cure that myself. It's going to be fine. And the doctor was also saying like they've never seen a person still standing with that pressure that she had in her brain. So she really, even there, then that's why I also said that before, that she always pretended that everything was okay towards us kids. But it was beautiful that we still had then, even though the doctor said she's going to have like maybe 5 months still to survive, to live, but worse, like best case. But then best case was 2.5 years. So that's how stubborn she was, and that's how she got her tumors out. And the moment that she woke up, she was like, and now I want to go home. And we're like, you have an open head, you have to stay. And that's then in the end also something where stubbornness can help a lot, I guess. But yeah, back to your question. I think in general, embracing women, even though being gay and loving men very, very much. It's very interesting for me to think about all the women. Also, when I did the guest list for my 40th birthday party, I thought the women in my life are just fucking amazing, and they could run the world, because they are way more reflected than most men that I know, and caring and smart and incredibly funny, incredibly strong. So, and how do you say, like having such a crazy endurance, like all these young mothers with their babies and so on. I'm like deepest respect for what the weak gender, as it was known, what they're capable of, and how smart they are, and how funny they can be, and so on. So it's it is definitely interesting to think about that, what women do in our lives.
Yeah, my son was born. He just turned a year old, and seeing my wife go through the process of labor and all the pain. And I mean, it was, and I think people set you up for it. Like, trust me, you're going to totally think different about her. Like once you see this happen, and I was expecting it, but I think once you go through it, it is really impactful. It's hard to kind of view, like women in general the same after that, but especially my wife. And it's about, women are, because of that, I think just even that, the fact that they can get pregnant and carry babies and then, give birth, I think it really shows in a physical way, like the strength that they have. And it sounds like, I mean, thank you for sharing that story about your mom. It sounds like she was an incredibly strong person. And it's incredible that your sensitivity to the situation, you were able to tell that something was going on, because she probably would have just kept going, so, but I think that stubbornness did actually help her.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I wish I would have a little bit more of that. I think she was so protective that I feel like maybe only talking about myself and my own brother. I guess my two sisters are definitely better at that. They're a little bit more tough also. Yeah, I wish I would have gotten a little bit of that, but again, I think she never wanted us to to do the same, because she had a little bit this mechanic of protecting everyone around, but not herself sometimes, I guess. So it's even with also I will never forget the first thing, because we always told her, because she was smoking a lot, and we always told her, like, and always wanted to protect her. And we always said, hey, you're coughing quite a lot and you should really try to stop smoking. And she never wanted to talk about that. And the moment I arrived in the hospital and I saw her there, that was the most tragic moment in my life. I think seeing her in this white hospital outfit and seeing her, that she had to admit that there's something wrong with her, that was like incredibly sad. But the first thing she said was like, I should stop crying. And she said, I don't want to hear any word about I should have stopped smoking. I was like, well, because she had lung cancer. And I said, first of all, I would never say that. And second of all, like, because she said, this was the moments I needed. She said, going on the balcony, taking a deep breath, smoking that cigarette for 4 minutes, and being out of that whole bubble of like 4 kids running around screaming and wanting something from her, was like her moment to reflect and to be alone. And that was also so important for me to hear that, because, sometimes when people don't tell you things, you tend to forget what they are doing for you and what the struggle was, because you think this is their life, but there could be another life, and there could have been another life when we would have been a little bit more grown up at times to do shit ourselves and not rely on her, or help a little bit out, that she doesn't have to ask for everything. And I feel like that's unfortunately things that you learn in a later stage, when you're like 17, 18, 19, and you start living alone and you realize, oh, this shit is not living itself. From the kitchen desk, or doing laundry is actually annoying. And so that was quite interesting to also think about, that she thought like that she was like, we're not going to talk about that. I smoked, I needed that. That's how life went. Eventually I got lung cancer from those stupid cigarettes, but guess what, they brought me through all this period, and you have to respect that, of course. And of course I would have never said, you should have, we told you. But interesting moments.
is mortality something that you reflect on often?
Yes, quite a lot. I think the growing up with not having a father and having this gap somehow, and you know how it is. You're in kindergarten, like, or in school, and everyone always asks you, "Oh, what are your parents doing? What is your father doing? What is your mother doing?" This situation always stressed me, like all my life, like always knowing that I have to talk about the dead person that I didn't even know, but I kind of thought I'm missing something or I'm missing out on something. Is quite interesting, and then to further on realizing that it's part of life, because also all my grandparents are dead. Also my mother's new boyfriend afterwards, and he's the father of my brother. He also died shortly before her. So we are, and I feel like also that's a little bit. I feel like that's part why I'm so dry, and my base level of excitement is always on a quite low level. Is because I'm very real with things, and it doesn't mean that I wish I sometimes could freak out more and be more happy about something. I am inside, but I think it's also a personality thing. Not everyone has to be super, super, super excited, but I think also I'm thinking about that moment now when my my husband now proposed to me, and we were like in Cape Town we were on a mountain, and then we overlooked the ocean, and he was like, I want to propose to you, and I feel like this is the perfect moment, because I grew up at the ocean in Denmark, and you grew up on a mountain, and we're on a mountain looking at the ocean. And afterwards I thought it was incredibly beautiful, but also I thought immediately about it. First of all, my mother's not going to be at the wedding because she was already incredibly sick, and I was very real. I was already so real about everything, and I wish sometimes I could just be like bursting out in being happy or bursting out in being completely sad. I think this mortal and dark side of people also often say it's something Austrian, actually, that there's some dark spirit, and we're all we're very dark humor and very I think talking about death and diseases, and I don't know, it's nothing that people are hiding away, or like it also happens. I'm going to a club, and the first thing often that happens is like I'm very deep in a hole talking about sad things and so on, but I also don't mind it. I mean, I'm not forcing people to talk with me about negative things, but it's definitely part of life.
Yeah, and I don't think it's negative. I mean, it may be something that people don't want to talk about, but it's we all go through it. I mean, it's just kind of it's the way things are, and not that we should, I mean, this is something that I'm thinking about a lot, which is why I asked you. But going back to what you said about humor, and I've always thought of you as like a humorous person, actually, even from just kind of seeing how you are online. I mean, I think you have you present kind of a good mix of kind of an online personality, I guess, for somebody who didn't grow up with the internet. And do you think that your work is a way that you kind of are able to perform in a way? I mean, I think even the way that you take selfies has like a humorous aspect to it. Not that you're trying to be funny, but like it seems like with your posing and like with how you how you do it in your house. I think there's something beautiful about it as well. So I hope you don't hear that as like a negative comment, because I mean it in a good way.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good thing. I mean, I know that I'm not a crazy muscle guy, so I cannot perform with crazy beauty or that kind of sexiness. And I was always like this lean weird stick, and you learn over time to live with that. The other thing is then, then I'm losing hair. Then I'm like, okay, I'm all of a sudden a guy with a mustache and no hair. And what kind of type am I actually? Like, because you could think yourself sometimes in like some actors or getting some role models out there that have similar features or similar body shapes. But I never really had that, to be honest. So I had to invent my own thing and figure out what suits me. And at some point, it was like super, super short shorts because I have super long, skinny legs. And I kind of always hated them. But then turns out that some people actually like them. And this mix and match. And like you say, maybe then sometimes it's all about over-exaggerating things that are already over-exaggeratedly weird. And social media in general. I mean, I wish I could bring across certain things, because it's not like I'm telling jokes on a table, but I feel like I have my few stories to share, and I'm an open book, and I don't have a lot of things that I don't talk about. And online, of course, it's never that spontaneous, and often it's really by accident, because I would like take a video of like an outfit because I'm thinking, what, it looks actually quite good, and it's so. It happened somehow because I bought like this weird blue pant, and this all of a sudden fits to my favorite sweater, and I look a little bit like a clown, but at the same time it sparks joy. And then I'm taking a video, and all of a sudden there's like a weird pop song in the background that people are like commenting on, saying, "Wow, what the fuck? I haven't heard this song in like years." And are you listening to that? I'm like, yeah, I'm quite often listening to this and that pop song, or like this weird song, or like, maybe it's also a part then of like revealing a little bit of yourself that is not planned. And I feel like even professionally, at my former job at Voo Store in Berlin, when I started there, I had no clue what a buyer is doing. I had no clue what creative direction actually means. So it was all learning by doing. I knew, like that visually I have an eye for certain things. I wanted to study photography when I came to Berlin after my geography studies. Then I didn't have the money for the university. Then I was like starting in a fashion PR agency. But they also first said, like, what do you want here? Like, you study geography and climate science and glacier and this and that. What do you want here? But it all felt very natural and very looking at the persona and like imagining that person could do certain things, and trusting in sympathy or an easiness or some willingness to work. But then coming to the point, like fast forward, like not knowing what buying means for a shop, what does creative direction means, and then all of a sudden there was Instagram. And I had my own Instagram, and I was like, why we actually don't do an Instagram for our shop? And then people were like, why would you make that for a shop? Like, and now I'm talking 15 years ago. Yeah, it must be 15 years ago now. 14 and a half or whatever. And I created this Woo Store Instagram, and I started posting stuff, and it was so interesting because people were literally commenting on it all the time, saying, that's funny, we heard about you as a shop because I went to showrooms in Paris, and I took pictures of the boxes when they arrived in the shop, and I opened the shoebox and I took a picture and I said, look, new in. And I leaked several like sneaker releases. I leaked a whole Easy season once, and like a new shoe that he was wearing in the showroom. And I asked him if I can take a picture of the shoe, and he was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, I've never seen this. And he was like, yeah, it's not released. And I was like, oh, amazing. And I uploaded this picture, and it was like reposted a few thousand times. And that also concluded at some point too that I was not really allowed to take pictures in the showroom anymore. And now it's very common that in showrooms you have this no social media policy, and you have to sign an NDA. But like 14, 15 years ago, there was wild times of like, there was no rules of social media. Nobody was interested to take pictures in a showroom. And I would go to a showroom with my phone. I would take pictures. I would say to people, look at this new collection. How do you like it? And I would already get a little bit of an indication if people going to love the pieces that I want to buy for the shop as much as I do if people really want to buy it. So it was very interesting times to learn all about that, what people want, what does reality mean? Like, that's always a word that comes up with all the creative direction I'm doing and all the things that I'm doing very often. I'm always saying, this is not real. This is not reality. I don't need to take a glossy photo of that sneaker because the brands are doing it themselves. Like, those sneaker pictures look like already like artificially generated pictures. What we need is a picture out of the box, with the paper, with the laces. The people see this is reality. There's a little bit of glue here, and excuse me, and that you can buy that shoe now in this moment, in that space that is surrounded on a picture. So this reality check for me was always and is still super important. Same for pricing. I'm like, I can be persuaded to buy like a very expensive piece, but if it makes no sense in terms of the sexiness and the desirability and the quality of the product, and it's just the price is high, I never bought these kind of things for our customers, because I said I don't want people to spend that money, because those pieces are gonna end up after wearing it twice somewhere in the closet or in trash, worst case scenario. So it's quite important to keep it real and keep it close to people that you know, and how people spend their money and what people are willing to spend money for.
Yeah, reality is an interesting subject and thought that I'm kind of always thinking about. Because I mean, we both work in an industry that's kind of about like selling a dream, really. So in the way that you're working now, I do want to talk to you about Voo, definitely, but in the way that you're working now, I mean, now that you're in a media, now that you're on the media side as opposed to just a retail side, how do you explore reality in that sense?
It's definitely a more complex topic. I think when you work for a shop where I can make all the decisions myself, and of course, like listening to the team and the surrounding, you can be much more narrow and much more narrow-minded, but in a positive sense. You can be much more strict with your vision. Whereas at Highsnobiety, of course, there's David, who is the founder of Highsnobiety, who has a very strong and very beautiful vision, and very I would say is very visionary with knowing what's next, and where trends are going, and where society is going also in a way, and where the business is going, which is also, of course, something very important. But then, like you say, there's the magazine, there's the print magazine, there's the online magazine, there's an editor-in-chief, and she has her vision for what's new, what's cool. But in terms of the shop and the products that we create, it's of course another reality, because as I said already many years ago, when there was a lot of blogging and blogs and this kind of people making suggestions for what to buy, and journalists and people writing about products and collections, I always said, it's one thing for you to write about that this is the best collection and this is the shoe of the season, but I have to blog and do journalism, let's say, with money. Like, if you write now that this is the piece of the season and everyone is gonna love that trend, and green is the new thing, or that sneaker is the new thing, good for you, because it's such an easy thing to post about that or write about that. But nobody's going to go back a year later and say, hey, you actually said this is going to be the sneaker of the season, but it isn't. If I bought 300, 400 pairs of that sneaker because I predicted it, then it's painful because I see that it didn't happen. So it's always interesting to look at how we are set up as a company now, what reality is and what is a trend forecast that you can just write. But running a shop and trusting your own gut feeling and trusting what people like and what you like yourself, and how you can nurture and build a community around you that actually gets it, what you have in mind and how you dress and how you combine certain, let's call them key pieces, is quite interesting because everything else I feel also is very unauthentic and very consumerism oriented, and I was always very allergic since I'm in fashion towards words like bestseller or must-haves. I'm always like, who wants to buy a bestseller? Like I don't. I want to buy something that I like and not everyone likes, and I want to run around with a pair of shoes that not everyone has. And what is a must-have? Like, we literally have all our closets full of clothing that would probably bring us to the end of our lives. So how do we nurture more self-confidence in wearing things again and again and again? And this even became a little bit of a thing for me on social media, because I started being called out would be too strong, and I'm not being bullied, but I find it quite interesting that people would mention that I'm wearing a certain particular piece again and again and again. And I'm like, yeah, well, why would I not? Like, we all talk about sustainability and really wearing things that we love. If I combine that one woolen sweater that I have that I really, really love, and I feel like that's the thing for me, and wearing this kind of silhouette, but I can combine it with shorts, and I combine it with long big pants and with more narrow pants and with suit shoes and with sneakers. All of a sudden, this became a thing almost for me to make a point in wearing the same wardrobe again and again. And there's not many pieces that are being added to my own wardrobe. So I probably working the wrong profession to say this, but I wish people would really listen to themselves, what they really, really wear, and that everyone has more self-confidence, because that's also one thing that I'm sorry for that long monologue, but when I'm often saying, if you're sitting with your best friends on a table, you should all be able to sit there with either naked or like with a t-shirt on and a pair of underwear, but it should not be about what we all wear. And I don't want to be that boring guy that I appreciate when people are dressing up and having a crazy style and really living out their personality and so on. Like, when I see people on the street that are really like having their own personal style, I'm so inspired. But at the same time, like, some of my funniest friends are dressing with like me, like myself, with a white t-shirt and a pair of pants, and getting simpler and simpler, but it's more about looking into the people's face and hearing what's coming out, and them telling stories, and them coming back from traveling and meeting people and experiencing things is definitely more important than back then, when I was maybe 16 and I was like mega excited to go to a fast fashion retailer to get a new t-shirt for every weekend because I wanted to look cool every time I went to a bar. It's probably a process, but I feel like, yeah, I'm getting more and more strict with that for myself, to knowing what's necessary and what does really have to be produced out there. I made myself very unpopular the other day at the panel talk during an outdoor fair, the biggest outdoor fair in the world, and there was a very last question. We spoke about sustainability, and I was like, why does this outdoor brand have to reinvent? I said, like, you cannot tell me that the jacket that I already have from you guys is becoming so much better next season. I mean, it's already waterproof, it's super warm, It's super light. Like, don't tell me that the innovation is so strong that you really tell me that I need to buy a new jacket every season. And it's very interesting to see that there is not even a proper answer coming, because in the end, brands are producing things to make people believe that they need a new down jacket next season. And again, I don't want to be the sad one that is like, or the guy that because I also love clothing and I love innovation and I love funny new patterns and this and that. But at the same time, especially talking to younger colleagues in my team, I'm like, I know what you earn. Use that money for looking into the future and for traveling and putting it into perspective. What you could buy for that 1,300 euro jacket, like what you can travel for and what you cannot work for. Like for that money, you can stop working 2 months earlier or 1 month earlier in your life, and this and that. It's quite interesting, because in the end, when you think about it, going to work has to be fun, and some people don't even have fun going to work. But for that money that you didn't get, you're buying stuff that you don't need, and it's very interesting to me to think about all that.
Yeah, this is something I battle with too. I mean, because I'm somebody who's making things, but but for me, it's never about like, I mean, of course you want to, we can all be honest and say you want to sell more, but I only really want to sell so that I can keep making things. I mean, it's kind of my way of like, putting my heart on my sleeve, I guess. I mean, not everything is so much about Drew within iRay, but it's like the way that it's what I want to put out into the world, but I do battle with, at least internally, with the structure of fashion and the speed and the, kind of the constant push for reinvention, I mean, like between us, what you represent, at least from a industry perspective, is like media. You're always wanting like new stuff, or even if you were at Voo, from like a store perspective, like where's the newness? But then also, this isn't you, but buyers in general, like what's the thing we know we can sell? So I was talking to Edward Cumming about this. It's like we need newness, but also like where's the stuff we can sell, but then newness, and you're kind of, and I think all of us, right, are getting pulled in that direction. Like I have the sales team who's like wanting certain things, and then I have like stylists who want certain things, and then there's the media, you're kind of, and then it's on your side too, right? I mean, you're like, you need to sell magazines and like, I mean, so how do you deal with or come to terms with the speed of everything and like how quick we have to move and that battle for newness?
I mean, first of all, I think also with your brand, it's much more deep, and it's much more like storytelling and really about finding the people that really understand your designs and your pieces. So I also realized that also the older I get, the more I realize that what I probably call like 20 years ago, I would have called it like very arty and who the fuck is wearing this. But the older I get, the more I'm like also looking at every stitch and like looking at your collection and seeing the stitches and the intention, and that it has been really touched. This product is really like growing on me so much. That's why I also feel like when you buy into brands like yours, it's definitely not something that I feel that you would get rid of after a while, because it's very special and a lot of work has been put into this. So that's definitely a big difference. But But then when you scale up, of course, the bigger the scale, the more you can exchange those pieces and just be like, okay, whatever, like next, or like, oh, what is to an event and now next. And it happens pretty soon, I guess, in the growth. But back to your question about innovation and new things and finding this sweet spot. I feel it's becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger challenge. Also, the shelf time of product is so incredibly short, and it makes me so sad that incredible collections sometimes have like a shelf time of like, it feels like 2 months, maybe it's 3 months, but the competition out there, and especially also post-COVID, the competition on the online market got extremely crazy, and people really thought so. And now there's the next peak, and now we see like there's actually mega tough right now. Like the past 2 seasons were extremely tough for many retailers, especially also the mega big ones, because they just thought, okay, then we just growth is like another 500, 600, 1000%. And all of a sudden they're sitting on all this product, because I'm not sure if people just really got smarter, and in general, the world situation is not very safe. And so people are really thinking twice about what they buy. But at the same time, when everyone buys more in their shops, then of course also there's much more offer, and then not everyone can sell it. It is incredibly tough, and it's so busy. And I feel like as a retailer, it's also not fun anymore, because you're in competition with the brands themselves, because everyone is doing see now, buy now. So they already have everything ready. They have everything shot. They show the collections. Everyone is going on their .com and buys it there. They have a better margin. They have a better service. They have more beautiful packaging that fits to the brand. You really feel like you're buying a piece of the brand, and I'm also happy for them. But you also feel a lot that the like multi-brand retail is really in trouble, and partly I guess also because there's no personality behind it, because everyone also tries to please everyone, and you have those big retailers that stand for everything, and they buy every brand, and then this brand is now hip, and you think you need it, and everyone buys that brand, even though you're thinking that doesn't even fit your portfolio. Why don't you trust your gut feeling that people can buy it somewhere else, but just trust that that you are doing your own thing and do your own perspective on things. It became incredibly crowded, and it became very difficult to navigate, because you can probably imagine like how often I'm getting a message from all sorts of people in the company saying, why don't we buy that? Why don't we have that? And I'm like, guys, just because it seems like this is a very popular brand, or this is a popular item, it doesn't mean that, first of all, we would get it, that the brand would give it to us. Why would they, when they can sell it themselves on their own direct-to-consumer channel? If one of those pieces works really well, I feel obliged also to look into other categories. I cannot be that person that comes somewhere arrogantly and says, I only want that, just give me the bag, but the rest I don't care about. Because I always see the brands, and I saw so many brands struggling already, and you cannot do that. Like, I don't know, I don't want to be that asshole that comes there and it's just like about the money and so on. And that's, of course, when it's beautiful that we have our shop, but we also have our media side where we can cover that, and that's quite charming. I feel that we have that possibility to support young brands and see what it means to them that we write about them, and giving them exposure, which is, of course, sometimes way more worth than us writing a little order. It's more important to them that we are putting them on the map and mentioning them on certain lists of like the newcomers for this and that, or the best new brands from that and that country, or whatever it might be. That is worth more than than buying or insisting on buying that one key item that they have. But it is incredibly messy out there right now, and it's not easy to run a brand. We also do our own clothing now with Highsnobiety, so that is something for me that is incredibly interesting and beautiful to see, but also incredibly challenging. And I'm like even having more respect for all the brands out there that are hustling and have to sit down and think about all the fabrics, the cuts, how to do something different, how to do it different enough. Like you just mentioned, how different do we have to be different enough to be interesting, but still, where's the black pant? Like, it's always the big struggle. And the first and only advice that I got ever as a buyer, I asked Susan Tate Frater back then. We somehow ended up getting the Farfetch award. It was the first Farfetch store award that they gave out. I didn't know what Farfetch was back then. That must be like 14 years ago now, so 13. and those guys write to us, and we're like, it seems like a big deal, but we don't know what Farfetch is. And they send us a little camera, and we had to introduce the shop, and we just did it a little bit, like for half an hour walking through the store. Turns out we got that Farfetch award and could sell product on Farfetch for free for a year, and we got a lot of publications out of it, and we were like the best, most innovative concept worldwide. And we got a lot of press out of it. It opened up our doors to online, which we then also at the same time launched from our own web shop, because we said when we launch on Farfetch, we also want to have our own presence and show how we could present ourselves as a web shop, and how do we look like. We have to be different. We have to represent a little bit how that shop looks like, but also online. And it cannot be this little weird thing. It has to be beautiful and different and so on. And then what did I want to say about Susan Tate Frater? She used to work there, and she's German. She studied geology, and all of a sudden this beautiful woman is standing in this shop, and she's like, yeah, we can also speak German, because I'm German actually before I moved to Great Britain. And she was working for Selfridges, if I remember right, and she really was like super early with moving big retailers into the online business. That's why she also then ended up at Farfetch. And I asked her, I said like, hey, I looked up who you are, and you're so famous in the industry, and you're a buyer, and you studied geology, and how did you end up with fashion and so on? And she's like, well, Herbert, what should I tell you? I'm telling you one thing. Everything you're going to do as a buyer is always going to be wrong. And I look at her and I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I'm telling you, either you buy 100 of something and you sell 99 pieces, and everyone is going to tell you, why the fuck did you buy that one too many? You know, like there's one left. And or you sell 100 and everyone is going to tell you, why did you not buy more? We could have sold 110, 120 or so on. And I thought it was so interesting that she said that, and I will never forget that, because it's totally true. I think since I'm a buyer, I rarely ever gotten a thumbs up or like well done, or you were betting on the right thing, because you will always focus on the things that didn't work, or the things that didn't sell. But you will rarely get a clap on your shoulder when someone says, wow, you believed in that thing and we were the only shop to have it. Great. Like, so yeah, back to your bigger question. It's very difficult to navigate, and I'm happy that we have this media version of online and the print media. We do a lot of events where we can support brands and do big brand and product activations. And for the buying side and the producing product side, I try my best to buy relevant product that at least on sale, someone is going to be incredibly happy about it, because it has a purpose and it has a reason why this piece has been produced. We're going to move into physical retail again, so we're going to open a shop in Berlin on a very famous street here called Unter den Linden, 500 square meters, and a fun concept, deconstructed, very Berlin, very rough.
Amazing.
And we try to find a middle way of reinventing retail. Would be a very big thing to say, and I always want to make things happen before I talk too big about it. But we're going to have a lot of young brands in there, and we've got a lot of fresh product and a lot of unseen product that is not everywhere. I really try to realize that you can anyway buy everything everywhere all the time. All the brands are keeping the best product for themselves. I'm done knocking at people's doors and them saying, oh, but we are launching this with that and that global massive retailer, and they buy already 5,000 pieces. And I'm like, yeah, good for you, but where is the community? Where is the sense of discovery and walking through the streets of a city and then discovering something? There were so many small moments in my career where I realized that it's the very best to take something very special and put it in a shop. And sometimes we had a HTM Nike shoe standing there, and we didn't communicate it. We just had it in the shelf, and people would be like turning around and being like, "What the fuck? You have a HTM shoe? It's just standing here?" And we are like, "Yeah, this is the moments that I think about now. When I think about what was special when it comes to retail, it was about making things accessible to people that are really interested in it, and not to resellers or to people that are waiting for it for such a long time to make money with it. But I want people to we had many releases, especially with Nike and Adidas, where we even thought about making people walk out of the shop with the shoes, because we wanted people to actually wear it. And I didn't want to be this weirdo and force people what to do with a product. It's too precious when you spend money with it. But I also didn't want people to buy it just to resell it. I wanted people to wear it. And it was the most beautiful moments when people came back and they were like, what the fuck did you sell me? I'm walking around with this military pattern army print Nike shoes, and people are stopping me on the street because they're like, I give you 1,000 euros, but give me that shoe. And I'm like, you bought this shoe because you loved it and not because it's worth a lot of money. So how cool is it that you bought it with your own taste and with the money that it's worth, but not with a resale price and so on. So I hope that we can recreate these kind of moments in our shop in Berlin and make people discover things that they didn't know that existed, or testing it, trying it on, and exploring nice, beautiful design and products.
Yeah, I think the multi-brand store, even though it's been hard recently, I feel like it's just so important. And it's really cool that you are, a part of something that has its own ecosystem. As you were mentioning, you have like the media aspect, and then you'll have like the store, and then now you're able to create your own thing. I'm really curious, like within a multi-brand store, what you're doing now, but also with Voo, how did you approach that storytelling aspect when you do only have, a certain amount of resources to bring in a new project?
I think it always came very organically. It's really like, I remember so much going to a first showroom. I didn't know what to do. I all my life went into shops not thinking about how did it happen that those clothing ended up in the shop. So I didn't know what a buyer was. And when it comes to storytelling and creative direction, it was probably the same story. I always felt like certain products have a sexiness and a desirability. That's something I remember from an early moment on in life, that I also told my mother once. She was shopping for a new wallet, and I told her, why don't you take this one? It's more beautiful. And she was like, yeah, but this is more expensive. And I remember telling her, but when you're more happy with it and you want to keep it longer, like something like that. I probably was not so profound telling that, but I remember that I just realized, why don't you take that? Making the right decisions about products, and seeing what is going to follow you for a longer time is something that just came very natural. And also in buying when it's over. Like, I remember the first time I bought Kenzo when Kenzo was taken over by the guys from opening ceremony. I thought that the tiger sweater that was communicating some sort of newness and some sort of new luxury, and it was a sweater, a jersey sweater, but it was nicely embroidered, so there was a fun juxtaposition. But then we bought a few of them, but then they were also sold out immediately. And I remember the season after, I think we bought it a second time, but then the guys were already telling us, you can only buy 150 of each and this and that. And I was like, why would I buy 150 of each? Like, I know it sold really well, but I think also we have to watch out for, like, what we spoke about, like, what is new? What is there something new coming? It's like, yeah, no, we're gonna. And I mean, now it's like 10 years fast forward, and these Kenzo tiger sweaters are still selling, and the newest creative director still has a problem with not doing those tiger sweaters because they're such a big thing still. It's always about finding some sexiness and some new product. What I remember incredibly well is when I started at Voo was I onboarded the white briefs. It was an underwear label from Sweden, and they did a collaboration with Nick Wooster, and I knew Nick Wooster, but I also didn't know, like, I knew who he was, but I didn't know him personally, and I was like, this product is like sparking freshness and newness to me, because it was white briefs, but with a mesh, and I thought, fuck, they're so sexy. And then Nick Wooster as this buyer guy that then I got to know him then years later, but I realized that this guy, there's a reason why he's so famous and why he was such a great buyer, because he knows about this friction and this juxtaposition that you have to bring into product to make it new and to make it desirable. And the packaging was amazing. So I remember so well at Voo how we built up. That was like the first order I did, and these boxes of this underwear of this mega hot guy in black and white, and it was like a fresh take on Calvin Klein, and it was see-through. And then we posted about it, and people came, and everyone loved it. And we reordered and also trying new things. I lived in Sweden for a while when I studied, and they have this military lip balm there that you can buy in pharmacies, and it was €1, and I always had it. And the story, it was beautiful packaging, very minimalistic, and you could push your finger up, and then there was this lip balm, and you could also use it for bruised hands and whatever. But they also told me in the pharmacy that you can also use it to fry sausages and whatever in the pan, because it's vegetable fat, so you can actually eat it. And then when I started the job at Voo, I was like, I remember that great product, I should bring that. And then I just bought a bunch in a pharmacy in Sweden, and we started selling them. And that became then a story for a newspaper in Berlin. So they wrote about that weird store that is selling pharmacy products, cheap pharmacy products from Sweden, but then also see-through underwear, but also the local schnapps and an alarm clock shaped as a mosque from the shop next door. So we always tried to be very inclusive and very diverse in what we offered in that shop, and not looking what other people are doing, I feel like. And that's still something that followed me for many years, that people said, this is not how you do it. And I was like, well, who says that? Like, or why don't you buy that piece? That's a bestseller. And I was like, a bestseller for whom? And they were like, yeah, we had a lot of Russian clients here, and Russian shops, and a lot of Italian shops. And I was like, yeah, no offense, but I see that this sparkling dress could work in a very elegant city, but Berlin is super rough. Nobody's gonna want to have a sparkling dress in a park here, drinking beer and living life in a different way. So back to the word realistic and reality. I think storytelling and curation always came with a certain reality check of people I know and people I can identify with, and then you keep it close to a certain lifestyle, and that lifestyle of the mesh underwear, of a cheap lip balm, of a limited sneaker, but also the very cheap pair of Nike socks next to it that you could also buy in a supermarket next door. As I was also told from Nike, they were like, you can buy those socks in the supermarket next door. And I would be saying, yeah, well, but I want to buy them at Voo. I don't want to buy them in a supermarket. So let me try it. And we try to sell the simple swoosh t-shirts. And if they don't work, they don't work. But I'm telling you, it's going to work because people want it and people are wearing that kind of stuff in that row. And they want to buy the Prada bag, but they also want to buy the Nike sportswear socks. And it all goes together because this is how people shop. This is how I shop. And that's why it's going to work. And it eventually worked out. So
time and time again, I always end up finding that the people who end up breaking the rules are the people that don't come from the system. You know, like you didn't go to school to be a buyer or a merchandiser. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. From like, you know, the music producer Rick Rubin, or like even Sterling Ruby or somebody. I mean, it's never like, I studied classical music for like 20 years. And so I make classical music. It's kind of like, you know, with Sterling Ruby, it's like I was doing, you know, like the classic paintings of like the fruit bowls and stuff. And so then I went like the complete opposite direction, you know, or Rick Rubin was like, I just liked hip hop, like, but what I was hearing on the radio was not what I was hearing at the clubs. You know, I mean, there's a part of like being naive almost in your work that presents a new opportunity because you don't have this kind of like perfect box that you fit into. But it also seems like, I mean, you're a very observant person. I mean, even like wanting to study geology, like you kind of mentioned, is like studying patterns and like changes over time. I mean, so what gave you the confidence to kind of like break those rules and stick with it? And how did you create a narrative around what you were doing at Voo?
Good question. Because I still feel like imposture. How do you say this in English? Like I still often have this moment where I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Because yeah, like I said, like I didn't study it, and I don't have the references that many other people have, and there's many very smart people around me that grew up very cultural and informed about many things. But my associations are always very also funny. Everyone always thinks they're funny, but I look at the dress or a certain design and I'm like, guys, you cannot put this kind of yellow with this kind of brown and this kind of red together because it's really bad. And we're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, do I really have to say what I'm thinking? Like, I have very different weird associations, but once I speak about it or tell people about it, everyone is like, you're right. You're totally right. I had a weird stomach feeling about it, but I couldn't tell why this is not working or this is not looking good. I'm not 100% where it's coming from, this observant thing I always had also. I also remember being embarrassed. I must have been an awful kid, actually. I was embarrassed about how my mother was clapping in kindergarten. I apparently told her that the way she claps is embarrassing. I was a very sweet kid, apparently, but also apparently like a little bit weird. I didn't like the nail polish she put on, and I don't really know where it comes from, this aesthetic, or not even aesthetic, but like this visual approach to things. But then in the end, the way I ended up with this job, I'm also super grateful to Yasin who founded Voo Store, because he once, then after he opened and yet the first season has been bought by another person, And I did the PR work in the beginning, so I was only there for inviting people to the opening and people to write about this shop. We were having coffee together because it's very close to our apartment here. I had coffee with him and I said, how's it going? And we would like every Saturday meet up for a coffee and speak about stuff and say like, you know, like, why is there not a coffee spot in the space? Why don't you do that? Should we think about doing this kind of event? And you should have that kind of clothing because everyone is asking for this. And he would then eventually ask me one day in the evening if I want to go for a drink, and then he offered me that job, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I have no clue what you are talking about because I don't know what that means. So it was, I'm very grateful for that I've gotten that chance. That's also like, still I'm trying to be very open-minded with people that we hire, because I'm always thinking you need that one person that trusts you, that this is very much a business of gut feeling and of being a little bit street smart with numbers, and you of course have to survive, and money has to come in, and you have to sell things at the right moment. But in the end, this is a people's business, and we always hustled our way through. Like, we had no business plan, we had no proper plan how this store is going to grow. But you know, all of a sudden we were like, hey, we are selling this brand so well, we should double the budget, and we trusted in that the money will come in, that we can pay for this double amount of products. And if it didn't work out, I could always call the brand and say, hey, I'm really sorry, we cannot meet this goal of paying for it. But things are going well, so please trust me that we're going to pay our bills, but please release the product and send it to us, and we're going to pay 2 weeks later. And people were always trusting us. We were often in very critical situations, but it was always about the gut feeling and about trusting what we liked and how we are dealing with things.
Do you feel like it got harder, more difficult over time, or even now, kind of the deeper that you got into fashion? Because I think when you start, the whole world feels new. So you can bring in the lip balm and the socks and all that, but the deeper you get, the more people you meet, the more you kind of get integrated into the system. Does it feel harder for you to break those rules because now you know so many of the rules?
Yes, yeah, 100%. I think that's always moments where, like recently also now with David from Highsnob, like us sitting together and talking about why do we actually open a shop and what is going to be special about it, and is it really going to be the brands that we are trying to hunt down to open the doors to us? Because Berlin as a city is already quite packed with retail and great brands. But what is special? What actually did excite us when we were young to go into to a shop, and everyone, like I mentioned, tends to only want to have what every other shop has, and everyone thinks, oh my God, they have this brand, so now I also need it. So it's definitely very, very important to keep the eyes open and to sit down again and again and talk about what does it actually mean? What is a concept store like, and why is everyone doing the same? And why can we not offer this and that? Why can we not have the best shaver? Like, there's so many things that I'm like looking for, like weeks and weeks in investigating what is the best hair trimmer for a bald head, like to trim your own, to shave your own head with. But I feel like a shop should always be a recommendation of products that you really believe in, that you really like, and someone did the research for you. So we are like a filter between the 5,000 shavers that you could buy out there, and we offer the best one. So I think this kind of multi-purpose shop that we were with Voo back then, because we had a washing powder, like a natural washing powder, the first like very natural, super nice smelling washing powder. And same story, people were like, why would you sell it in a shop? And I was like, we are a shop, we can sell whatever, we sell clothes, why should we not sell a shopping. Why should people not be able to shop a washing powder here for their clothes that smells really good? Keeping the eyes open and suggesting things to people that they didn't know that exist, and us doing the research, what back then like also magazines did for you. I think that is something that is probably the biggest challenge, to stay open-minded and stay interested in all sorts of fields of technology, gadgets, charging cables, headphones, all sorts of stuff that we're looking into, because we're also at a very prominent street where a lot of people are passing by. I want people to walk into the shop and think, oh, wow, this is the weirdest vase I've ever seen. But also, wow, they have the new headphones in collaboration with Stussy, and they have also a very elegant looking headphone next to that. So I think that's a little bit our vibe right now. And we, of course, have to kick ourselves all the time to inspire and because very often also the things are not working from day one. Like there were often things that we had in the shop for a while, and then we're like, fuck, it's not working, and it's actually not as cool as we thought. But then you also realize that sometimes it takes time, another season or another 2 seasons, and then people are coming back saying, oh, didn't you have this and that here? So it really depends on where you are in the world and how fast are people with picking up things. I don't know if you saw, like now that people in the States, I guess you know, like people are having all these drinking cups with a straw in it. I don't want to mention the brand, but I'm like, I heard about it like a few weeks ago, and I was like, why would people be so insanely interested in having a little cup with a straw in it that they can carry around, and they collect different colors, and all of a sudden, Highsnobiety is writing about it. People are completely mad about it and getting crazy about it. And then I guess this is gonna swap over to Europe, and then why not having it in the shop and trying it out, and people are gonna react the same way that I reacted the first time I heard about it. But guess what? Maybe 2 weeks later they want one, and it's a little bit about the relevancy and the fun aspect of certain products also, that are radiating a certain pride sometimes, I feel also, because that's something that I still think back of, and I unfortunately didn't have that in a very long time. But when I was younger and I was like listening to the Strokes, and the Strokes would wear a Mickey Mouse t-shirt, and I wanted to have so badly a Mickey Mouse t-shirt, and I finally found one, and I felt like the coolest person in the world, and people asking me, why the fuck are you wearing a Mickey Mouse t-shirt? And I think that's when you grow self-confidence, why you wear certain things, because they are radiating a certain message, and then eventually finding someone or meeting someone that actually knows immediately that this is, you wear this t-shirt because you love the Strokes, is priceless, because then you know that you're wearing the right thing, let's say, to communicate a certain lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, even just past what you're wearing, like what you just mentioned, even the objects that we use. I mean, there's a store in LA called The Good Liver, and there's a few stores like this in LA. But The Good Liver, it's downtown, and I go by there all the time, because the things that they sell are all objects, so it'll be like this notepad, that's been made for 80 years in France. And then it'll be this like, wood, like basket weaver from, like Oregon, or, and when I go in there, it's not even really about buying stuff from there, because it might be a stapler for like $100 or something. But it's just about seeing the beauty of the design that people come up with, and the attention to the craft of it. And I would say even like the lip balm, that you used as an example, it's like sometimes those small things can spark joy. And I think within a store, it's really about the like surprise, like the excitement that you can create for people, because they may go in looking for Prada because they know you sell it, but they also leave with like, this journal that a girl is making in Copenhagen. I think
exactly.
I love looking at even, our small daily objects. Like I look at my clothing, with like a lot of care and, so yeah, I think even the objects we have in our life are interesting.
100%. And it's also becoming more and more important, like things that we live with, and especially also, also the pandemic, after the pandemic, during the pandemic, how people realized how important it is to surround yourself with, in your flat with like things that you like or that you like to hang out on your couch. It's becoming incredibly important. And yeah, like you say, it's even like sometimes about like bringing certain objects into a new environment, because you might be able to buy that certain notepad or like a vase somewhere around the corner or in a big department store, but taking it out of that context of a crazy amount of things and bringing it to a more curated for a certain approach or lifestyle or vision, bringing it together. It's I think that is something that people are paying for, that they go somewhere and someone has done the research for them. And I feel like we are even like discussing these days, there's some like quite old school cosmetic brands, but they do that one cream and that one serum, and it's the oldest serum that exists. But why do I have to really buy from that brand all the products? Why can I not? Now I'm 40 years old. I tried a lot. I have people around me that tell me certain things. Why, like completely over exaggerated saying, but why can we not give all that information that fits for a certain person and pass it on to someone, saying, this is the coolest gift that you can give to someone? Like, one example is, I don't know how many times I bought a book now and gave it away as a gift, called Sextrology. It's a super thick book, and it's about astrology meeting sexuality and sex. And you can go to Aquarius, and then you go to straight, bisexual, or gay, or queer, and then you have like a certain description of what you like and not like in sex life and this and that. A lot of it is bullshit, but I'm telling you, it's the most entertaining book. It's like such a party starter, because everyone wants to know the list of do's and don'ts in sex life for a certain star sign and sexuality or preferences. But then I'm like thinking, this is a great gift. This is a gift that you're never going to give away. It's a nice book. It looks beautiful. It helps you to get to know your friends better or people around you. It's a little bit a kick in the ass of like talking about certain things. You end up Googling stuff that you never heard of, that is part of people's sex life. So there's certain things that you get to know during your life that that is like a fun thing, or a great book, a great lip balm, a great this and that. And then it's about price, about quality, about heritage, about bringing it from a certain city and then saying, hey, this is the oldest soap maker in the world, and we bring it to you. And here you have a nice gift, because, there are moments where you just have to buy a fucking gift for someone, and we could make it easier for you to find something that has a purpose and has a function. So instead of buying something completely stupid, ridiculous that nobody needs, I would love to offer you a certain thing that I think is great as a gift. So it's all about relevance and a curation and knowledge, and I feel like that there is like a big world out there of things that I don't know about, or like talking about the panettone that everyone is giving in Italy as a Christmas gift, and getting one now every year from Prada because they bought that Marchesi panettone, like this nice pastry shop in Milan. I'm like, this is so smart, like getting the one of the nicest panettone and having this Marchesi branding and this nice packaging and getting something that you can eat, that you can share with your family is like so well thought through of a big luxury brand that you are having a moment thinking about that brand. I love that, and maybe it's also an age thing, but I still think it's better than sending around a weird product that you didn't pick yourself.
It's interesting you brought that up, because I was really curious how you think about, the easy word is like collaboration, but when you're talking about, when a Prada combines with a pastry shop to like do a certain thing, or like, when I think they had Wes Anderson, the film director, like create a space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
From that to, let's say, if we're going to keep using Prada as the example, like a Prada and an Adidas collaboration, from your perspective, when does a collaboration feel right? And then maybe like, when does a collaboration go wrong?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not, I wanted to say it's a big question, but actually it's not, because somehow it feels like it's always a gut feeling that I also have, and there's a certain excitement that comes up when a certain collaboration is being announced, and sometimes I know immediately this is so flat and this makes no sense. I think the two examples that you just mentioned, I mean, Marchesi is part of Prada now, so it's not really a collaboration, but that feels very natural to me, because when you go to a showroom or go to one of the events, they always have the catering from the Marchesi restaurant and their pastries. So it's so beautiful and it's so smart, and it's I love it. Like it's so well done, and I love to sit there. And I'm usually not like the crazy fine dining person, but I just love to arrive in Milan and get this super nice aperitivo there, and a little pasta and a little risotto, and like hearing the stories of Miss Mucha Prada loving this pasta, that's why it's on the menu and stuff like that. That's really like full circle for me. Thinking about the Adidas collab, it was also a big surprise to me, but I found it quite organic as a European sports giant, and Prada being always very good with sneakers, but then also always wondering if they have the expertise to make a proper sneaker. So I personally love the boat shoe that they did, and I have them in 3 colors, and they're completely falling apart, but I feel like nobody else bought them. It's like this very flat boat shoe that I love, and there's the boost sole inside, so you have the technology from Adidas, but you also have the design language with these little bubbles and the curves outside from Prada. So that's really when two worlds come together, and it was unexpected. But then there's many collabs where I don't feel like, why did you guys come together? There's no friction, there's no excitement. Who is bringing what on the table? So it's not very easy, but it's also actually part of our daily business at Highsnobiety that we do matchmaking. So we bring liquor brands with fashion brands together, or we also came up with the idea of bringing Dries van Noten together with Stussy. We did a whole round of ideas that we were pitching to him at Dries, and Dries at Dries, and it was a super exciting time, because he was not very open for many things, and he said like, hey, I don't want to do collaborations, I think it's not for us, and so on. But then we went to him and we said, we know that the guys from Stussy are actually big fans of Dries, and this would be an honor for them, and this doesn't feel unnatural, because when we write that in the press release that the Stussy guys wanted to do it, then it's not like, oh, Dries van Noten wanted to be young and fresh and went there. And I feel like what came out of that was mega beautiful, and they were all on both sides very happy with it, and it felt very natural and organic in all the graphic design and product design that they did. So we were very proud of that. But but there's a lot of stuff out there that feels like, why would you do that? And in the long run, it really hurts. You're probably always going to be bad for your brand reputation when you do random bag collabs or random like liquor collabs and this and that. I think you can endure a few that are weird and you know that they're going to pay the rent. But in the long run, rather do something very small that feels very organic and you feel like there's this friction coming together of like, oh, they have the expertise of doing the outdoor clothing and we didn't know how to do that yet, but we have a certain silhouette that we are good with, or even thinking about brands that are just very good with a certain silhouette and you bring some patterns or some materials to it, or the opposite, you have like brands like Gore-Tex and how can you bring that to a fashion brand? But there's a lot of unorganic feeling and unnatural feeling collabs out there right now. So I'm myself not very excited about much these days, I must say.
But it's almost as if, I mean, I agree with you. It really like the energy of the brands or of the designers have to align. But I think this just goes back to at least with what doesn't work, the speed of the industry. Like you're expected to like sell more and to grow. And so it becomes like, how can we do even though we're like this luxury candle brand, like how do we collaborate with like the hot streetwear or like, and sometimes that can work. Like, as you said, if there's kind of a mutual understanding of the worlds that they belong in. But I feel like a lot of the time it falls short. And I was curious if you thought that was falling short because of the product itself, or if just really like it doesn't feel like it belongs together.
I feel like often it's very much about the urge that everyone thinks they have to do a collaboration. So they really force it, and it doesn't come from a genuine point of view or like a friendship between brands and so on. But yeah, it's hard to say. It's just the sheer amount of it also. But I do believe that certain things of like when you're in a brand universe and you stand for a certain thing, that it could be very interesting to open up to new worlds, or to stay with a Prada example, like why not getting the best water bottle maker to then help you out with something, and or them working with extra light, who is like a brand that is doing the lightest like rubber and sturdy soles and doing this co-branding, even though you would not really see them together, but giving a little bit of street credits to certain innovators out there, and honoring them for what they do and highlighting them. It's so interesting. I'm still thinking about one proposal that I once pitched to some people at Versace and at Prada, but nobody seemed to really like the idea. But it was at a time when Prada came back with the shirts that have like two very different patterns, like kind of bowling Hawaii shirts, and crazy pattern on one side, another crazy pattern on the other side. And I love this two-sided juxtaposition also of these two patterns. And I always imagined how fucking crazy it would be to get Donatella Versace and Miuccia Prada together in a room and them creating this shirt together, but one would be like Versace pattern and one would be Prada pattern, because they also are so different. But this look and logo, this lockup would actually allow it. And then these two women taking a picture together with this one shirt behind them, representing the two big houses, and them coming together as these strong women, as a charity to then sell 2,000 of those shirts for charity and bringing women together, or doing women empowerment, or breast cancer, or whatever it could be. But I just thought it would have been such an incredibly strong message to have this one item that would have been so incredibly great to bring these two very different houses together, and it would have worked out visually, but it would have also been such a strong story. So I always feel like there has to be a sense of originality and beauty behind a collaboration.
That would have been insane. Because those bowling shirts already had a chokehold on fashion at the moment. So if those like two Italian, like you said, strong female designer powerhouses came together to do that from two totally different worlds, it would have been like a literal blending of the worlds. I can see why you loved that idea.
Yeah, totally. And I'm still thinking about it. That one day it has to happen. Maybe when there's another wave of those shirts coming. But I think that's a little bit the beauty of like sometimes thinking out of the box, or really trying to make things happen that they don't seem like the most obvious ones, or thinking about big collections and it has to be a big thing and there has to be Skims Fendi or this and that together. Like I feel like it's very often, of course, about the exposure that you get as a brand and the newsworthiness of it, and therefore I feel like it's also more sustainable to think about one product that you can do together, and then creating this sexiness and this sexiness that fashion can and should have, also of like this fashion world, but in a positive and charming way, and not like in a arrogant, elite arrogance way, Yeah.
You've always been a fan of Prada, and you've also been really supportive of Raf Simons. So I'm sure it was fun for you to see them come together. But for you, what is it that when this comes to like your personal wardrobe or your personal belief in what you like to wear, what connects you to certain brands or designers?
I feel it's the intellect in a way, and I don't want to intellectualize fashion too much, but I feel like with Prada, but probably also with Raf Simons back then, it was very much about a certain empowerment and a certain persona that the two houses or two designers always represented, where Prada was always very good at bringing newness and ugliness on the table and being able to transport a certain storyline and a certain look. And I was always amazed by that the first Prada show that I was invited to, I was also like, oh my God, now I'm sitting here and I thought I'm the biggest Prada fan, and now they're coming around the corner with this collection. It's so heavy and it's so nature, and the jewelry is made out of wood and it's not fresh. It's so heavy and it's kind of sad and it's corduroy, and where's the nylon, where's the freshness? But then turns out that 3 months later I fucking loved every piece, and I was like, they did it again. Like they make me like things, and they're capable of putting the scenery right and the models and the makeup right, that I look into a new kind of style and they do something completely different than everyone else is doing, and make it work. And I feel like that's something that I always appreciated incredibly much about Prada, and to an extent also before now Raf came, and before it came a little bit too logo heavy, I must say. I appreciated that the clothing was not visible from a logo perspective, but more from a visual perspective and a way of how to wear it. And gray considered as like a gray dull color, but then they made it fresh, and black nylon, they made it look chic. And now it's a lot about the logo, I feel, and still a big fan, but also the prices went through the roof. So I'm also very much thinking about, I'm buying a lot of vintage pieces, and that makes it even more fun to buy something that nobody can just buy from the rack, but you have to investigate in it. One of my last purchases was the bag that people are wearing in their shops. So the people working in the shop have a little worker's bag where the business cards fit in, and maybe a pen and a little notebook to write things on it. And I always wanted one, and they of course never sold me one because they said you cannot buy it. This is for the workers only. And I found one that an old worker sold, and I was so fucking happy because it's so precious to me. Because I know you cannot just buy it. It's like it's quite sweet to wear this, and then people would ask you, where the fuck did you get this bag from? We are not allowed to wear this bag on the street. And I'm like, I'm not one of you. I'm not working in the shop. I have this bag because I wanted it. And I'm not saying that I don't want to be connected with that. I love usually the stuff from Prada, but it is interesting. It's almost like a little community, and they're like so proud of that bag that you cannot buy it, and I got one now, and I'm super proud of it. So it became more of a hunt of like products from old collections rather than buying into the new things, because they're also ridiculously expensive. And think about Raf Simons, he was the same. I feel like he was very good always at finding new silhouettes, new materials, doing things in a different way than other brands are doing it. That's why I feel like they're also two visionaries that are thinking out of the box and not only thinking about sell-through. And that happens, of course, with their merchandisers, and they tell them what shoes to create in the shoe department and this and that, but they still do that very weird, very narrow collection that not everyone understands. And that's what I appreciate a lot about those two houses. Even though I must say in the very beginning it didn't work out for me. I was supposed to be extremely happy about it that Raf Simons joined Prada, but I think in the beginning I was skeptical, and I feel like I was also right with my skepticism because it didn't work out for me in the beginning. I felt like the elegance was a little bit lost, but now the elegance is back. So I'm happy that they found their way of working together and how they work with prints and patterns, and it became more sensitive and more charming again and less hard, which I didn't appreciate that much.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, like even with greats like Mucha or Raf, at big houses, sometimes the commercial aspect can take over. When I was still working retail and I was kind of helping with buying, Raf had just got there, and I remember seeing certain things on the show and I was like, this is really cool, and like I like this and this. But then once you actually get to the showroom, like they've pared it down, from kind of, maybe like 50 looks from the show, but there's maybe only like 10 that are for sale. And then the rest is just like lots of nylon pieces, or, so it's always, I think within our industry, there's always that push and pull between creativity and the commerciality of it.
100%. And I mean, I was also very fortunate, like it was with brands like Nike, that at some point they allowed me to buy any category. So I would go in the department where they are throwing spears and this and that, and I would find incredible treasures. That was also always interesting, that I would take a shoe that nobody wanted, but they're like, but this is a weird, like, I don't know, it was not a bowling shoe, but some sort of weird sports shoe. And I'm like, but I love it. This is newness. This is for me amazing. Like, can we have it? And we would get calls from Nike people asking, hey, what shoe did you release today? And I'm like, we didn't release a shoe. We posted that we have this shoe now. And they're like, yeah, but other shops are calling us saying, why did they get this release and we didn't? And I was like, everyone had the chance to buy that shoe, but nobody wanted it. We bought it and we announced that we have it now in the shop. it's not a release date, but we were just following our own gut feeling that shoe is a good shoe. Same for the Monarch. Back then they had this new Monarch shoe, and we said, but where's the Monarch? And they were like, we cannot give you the Monarch. It's on Amazon for $40 or $35. And we're like, but you have this new Monarch. Why don't we tell the story of the old Monarch together with the new one? And if people want to buy the $35 shoe, why not giving it to them? Big discussion. And I also, of course, want to always respect the brand's way of doing their storytelling and their rollouts. But sometimes they also have to think out of the box and bring people on the way where this shoe is coming from. And this is the original dad shoe. And why don't we show it to people? And with Prada, we were also fortunate enough that they told us, buy whatever you want from every category. And it was complete newness. I think there was one more shop in the world that was allowed to do that, because there were not many multi-brand shops left in the world that were allowed to buy the collection, because they focused on direct-to-consumer. And we were walking around that showroom, and we felt like I were very, very, very humble, because everyone working there was very strict and very... you cannot try on things, you cannot put it on the table, you always push the chair back. It was very humbling and very much like the Devil Wears Prada-like. And I'm not saying this to bitch about it. I was thinking it was, there's a reason why this fashion house is so respected, because they treat things in a very respectful way. And I wanted to accept that and respect that. But so we walk around that showroom, and I'm like, I want a 3-pack t-shirt. And they're like, why the fuck would you buy the 3-pack white t-shirts? And I'm like, because the price is insanely good. I love that little triangle logo on the back, and the packaging is amazing. I said, like, when we're going to post that packaging, people are going to love it. We have to tell people the story that you have a 3-pack of t-shirt. They were like, yeah, but it's not from the fashion show. And this is just like these t-shirts in long sleeve, black and white that we have here, and short sleeve. And I'm telling you, everything worked out exactly the way that we imagined it. Like, we posted a 3-pack t-shirt with this see-through packaging, and it had these Prada letters on it and described that this is an essential. It was very Marcella-esque described of, this is, our white t-shirts, and they're very slightly branded on the neck and so on. And we sold them incredibly well. Now they cost a lot of money. They're a peak product now for them, I guess. But when we started buying that collection, it was for 3 t-shirts, 170 euros, I think. I mean, it's unbelievable to think about now, because I think now one t-shirt is 500 euros or whatever. But I think being able to bind 2 collections the way a shop wants, and maybe you cannot always trust every shop, because I also feel like, unfortunately, I have to say that there's many buyers also that are really like asking the brand what is selling and what is not selling. They don't have their own vision or their own approach, so they sometimes are in for the money and not for the vision. And of course, you need to have both, and eventually the vision would turn into money, hopefully. But I feel like when you're a very special shop or a specialty shop that really has a vision, then you sometimes really, as a brand, have to trust the buyer that they know how to communicate the brand in the right way, with the right colors, the right materials, the right buying, which I'm not saying that you have to be completely cherry picking everything and just taking the best sellers, but just to trust your gut feeling and letting them do their own pick. And if it's a little bit of the boring t-shirt and a little bit of that sneaker that you thought is completely sad and nobody wants it, but if you trust that they have the right customer, you should let them go and try it.
Definitely. I think, money versus vision. I think money you can always find, especially within fashion. I think because it's a visual, art form, there's always people who want to be a part of it, even if they're a banker or venture capitalist or whoever. So I feel like money is easy to find, but vision, you can't, there's no way to really, it's not like a thing you really like have or you can transfer. You know what I mean? It all depends. Yeah. It all depends on the team that you have.
True. 100%. I mean, it's interesting to think about like a bigger structure. And we at Highsnobiety, we are part of a bigger company now since a year. But they definitely also realized that the vision and the individuality is more important, or is very important to nurture, because there is a 10 billion revenue around us, and they are good at making money, but our very small revenue that we are making is actually the one that might pass the way for what is going to bring the next 10 billion, because it starts somewhere, and there is a little bit of a sense that after doing this for such a long time now, that you can be in the forefront of a certain thing and a vision and a trend, and that drops down to a very broad amount of people that are going to buy into that new kind of vibe or silhouette or vision. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about how there's the marketing and also the merchandising side, but also the side that tells you we cannot always buy the same things just because they work now 3 times in a row. It doesn't mean that they're going to work a fourth time, and we have to try new colors, and we have to try new silhouettes, and we have to give a new brand also the chance to grow with us, because who would have thought that Simon with his Jacquemus brand, starting from the streets of Paris with like 4 dresses, would grow into a multi-million euro business with that very strong, straightforward vision. So you have to trust in your gut feeling and into individual people with what they do and what they believe in.
How important is your environment in the way that you think about the work you do? Because being in Berlin, it's had such a intense shift of energy, I would think. I mean, within the last, of course, like since the wall came down, but how does your environment change or influence the way you think? And maybe can you feel the energy of a city, when you are when you have a physical space that you're inviting people to?
Very good question. I think Berlin as a city, and also with like me tapping into retail and fashion, was definitely mega important, because I feel like it was also a way how even global fashion, in which direction it went, the easiness, the very liberal and very left-wing way of doing things, talking about feeling free, storytelling, diversity, music, culture, vintage. I remember so well, we had this mega famous Italian blogger. She back then was the biggest blogger in the world, and she came, and I feel like she came into Voo store and she didn't understand why the fuck this shop looks like it. It was like worn out walls and weird racks, and everything was like very approachable and very mixed things, and like I said, a few Nike sneakers and socks, but then there was a little Marni dress and this and that, and I feel like she has never seen a shop like that was creatively so different from everything else she has seen in terms of boutiques. And eventually, she would buy 1 or 2 things, but then she would leave, and then many years later, the same person would come back in like a Vetements outfit, and I'm like, Vetements is something that people didn't buy here in Berlin, because people are dressing like Vetements already, and people are putting their own jeans together and they go vintage shopping and wear their oversized jackets, and Demna used to be here all the time and was soaking up this energy of the city and the techno scene and the freedom and so on, and doing things differently. So I feel like how the circle really closes is in terms of thinking different, thinking luxury different, thinking street, like bringing streetwear up, bringing luxury down, like finding this level of or pace, or finding this basic level of where all people come together. And I learned this word like recently only, but I thought it was fantastic, and it really describes the city so well. It was in a podcast where they were talking about a very famous restaurant here, which is considered very chic and one of the most elegant, famous restaurants in Berlin, called Grill Royal. And even the word Grill Royal, like I always thought that it's so posh, but actually it's not posh. They always wanted to make a joke about it, like they wanted to be funny about it, like a royal grill where you can eat super expensive steak, but the way how people are being hosts there, and the way the people who are working there are like people that go out a lot. They go dancing, techno, and like having this kind of lifestyle, but then still being a host in a very elegant surrounding, and being very friendly and treating everyone right. And they were talking about the word parvenu, and then they were speaking a lot about it, and I was reading about it afterwards. So parvenu, a person of parvenu or a city of parvenu is explaining people who came to wealth within their own life and with what they do. So it's kind of new rich, or like especially creative people who came to money with their work as an artist or a designer or whatever, or an architect. And I feel like there's a certain beauty in that, and that explains very much the city of Berlin right now. I feel like most people didn't forget where they came from, even though they have money now. And also I grew up and I also earn money now. That was not always the case. But I feel like there's a different way of spending the money. And what I mentioned in the very beginning, you really think about what is really important. And it's still important to go to this nice restaurant and eat great food and be together with all these people. But it would be like, there would be a famous TV person or some crazy famous football player or Kanye West sitting there when he comes to Berlin. But everyone is being treated the same way. And guess what? I feel like sometimes you might be even being treated nicer when you don't look like you have $1 million on the side, but more like you're being hosted in a way that you are seen as a person. And I can come there with a Nike running outfit, which happened, and I'm being treated the same way I feel, as long as I'm very friendly to people, and being treated the same way as the elegant couple next to me in an evening gown. So I feel like, back to your question, I feel like the city of Berlin is always humbling me, and I feel like it's beautiful to live in an environment, in a surrounding where there's a lot of different cultures, and a lot of Turkish people around us, and Arab people around us, and old and young, and it feels very good. And back to the word reality, it keeps everything real. I come back from Paris and I'm taking a deep breath, because Berlin feels so much more relaxed, and people that don't have to hustle day and night and have 3 jobs like they have to have in Paris or in New York to make a living. Here they have 1 job, and they probably live in a 3 times bigger flat, because the lifestyle is different, and the price of living is different. And I feel like that then, of course, also reflects often in the way that I do my job. I want to show reality. I want to creatively show reality when we do photo shoots, when we create clothing, and when we buy certain things from other brands, and how we also do our collaborations. We want to create this world of working with Café de Flore in Paris, but also Bar Basso in Milan, and we want to do some t-shirts. But I also must say, it's not about the sake of selling as many t-shirts as possible. It's more about putting those places on the map that they're culturally relevant, and that we feel like wearing that Bar Basso Highsnobiety t-shirt is actually cooler than going to a luxury shop and buying that logo t-shirt, because we are thinking about the guy that that runs Barbasso since a long, long time, and we want to give him the credit for being an open house for so many creatives and people, and inventing the Negroni and Spagliato and stuff like that. So it's more about culture and being in the know rather than having a lot of money to buy the most expensive piece or the most limited piece. It's more about you're in the know, what are the cool venues, the cool cultural institutions, the coolest museum. When we did this collaboration here with the Neue Nationalgalerie here in Berlin with the Mies van der Rohe building, when it reopened, we did this T-shirt that just says Neue Nationalgalerie on the back, and everyone was like, why would we do that? And I was like, because the name is enough. I want to have a very dry Mies van der Rohe-like T-shirt that just says the venue. Like, we don't need more. We don't need the big design. We don't need the floor plan on it. We can do that. But this is the main T-shirt. And guess what? It sold the best. It was fun to see that we can put places on the map and celebrate with them what they achieved. And I think that's the beauty of being a media house and producing products and trying to make nice collaborations and living in a city that has a lot of that to offer and still stay humble about history that happened here in the city and knowing about seeing it every day on the streets where there's still bullet holes in the walls, and the city has seen a lot of division and war, and it's very humbling to realize that in everyday life, and realizing that fashion is just a little hobby, a hobby for us, or should be a hobby for us.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the mortality thing we were talking about earlier. Like, you're reminded every day. I mean, so many of the communist buildings are still standing, and you're kind of reminded every day of the tragedy that happens, and also just the fragility of life too. I find that feeling more comforting for myself than the opposite. Like, even within Los Angeles, I have a hard time in Beverly Hills. I don't really connect with that kind of feeling. I love downtown and I love East Hollywood, and where I live now is like a bit more of, like, maybe you could say like a rough area, but I actually like that. That's something I connect with, and not in kind of like a feel bad for me, I'm like in the struggle or so, it's nothing like that, but it's more like, it's more like, to me, this feels real, and I can appreciate the beauty of a chapel that has a painting on the ceiling from 500 years ago or all that. I mean, I love experiencing that, but I also love walking outside and seeing, like, hot dogs being sold from a cart or whatever. And it seems like your worldview as well is like connecting that, like, people call it high and low. I don't love that saying necessarily, but it's a great way of explaining kind of this like mix of culture.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny, like everything that you say and how you explained it is totally aligned, because that's literally also what I said many years ago in an interview where someone said, like, why did you end up in Berlin? You come from, like, I literally come from the surrounding of the sound of music, of like a very, very beautiful alpine setup where it's just like, in winter it's snowing for 2 days and then it's like crystal, like clear blue sky for many, many weeks, and you go skiing and there's no graffiti on the walls. Everything is just very even. You don't stumble on the street, and there's no trash, and everything just feels so artificially alpine Disneyland park-like that it almost provoked me. Like, at some point I was like, what is this society here? It's like everyone is like always super friendly, and it's everything about tourism and making it beautiful for everyone. And then I came to Berlin the first few times, and I'm like, I love that. Like, it's so rough, and you still have a feeling there's something to be developed. There is place for young people. There's place for different thinking. There's a place for people who don't think they need to be working in a bank or earning shitloads of money to be happy. So I appreciated that, and I still feel like sometimes think like talking, like going back to what I said before about, I still feel like I'm not grown up, because in my brain I still love the same cheese toast with ketchup that I loved when I was a student, and I still love a cheap pizza or some junk food, and hang out with friends in a very easy way, as I liked back then. And it's beautiful to sometimes have those other more elegant fine dining evenings and this and that, but it is interesting that this kind of, I feel like that's never going to change that much. It's even thinking about now of my birthday that is coming up, and the celebration that I'm planning, what people expected me to do, and certain friends would have thought that it should be like a very, like, talking about that famous restaurant. I was like, I love that restaurant, I love the people that are there, but I also have to say this is not 100% me. So it has to be more me. It has to be more easy. There has to be some karaoke and some drag and some unexpectedness and some easiness, and there should be a person making some pizzas and this and that. I don't need people to run around with some truffle and caviar and stuff like that anyway don't like everything that is expensive when it comes to food. I don't really like, I must say. It has to be more me when it's about my birthday. And I guess the same for now when we are getting married finally. It's also brand new and we didn't even invite anyone to it, but apparently my husband and I are going to do a big celebration, because we only got married during the pandemic, so there was no one there to celebrate with us. But now we're going to finally, after so many years, do a big party in Berlin. And when we talk about that as well, it has to be feeling true to ourselves. It has to be easy. It has to be the way that we like it. And we're only going to invite people who know that this is us, and they are not going to be bitching about, why was there only pizza in the garden, and why was there only later on this and that. Like, I feel like, back to the point of, like, you have to surround yourself with people around you that accept you the way that you like things and want to be, and what you wear and so on. So, let's see how that turns out.
Oh, congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you.
With everything that's, we mentioned before, but there's just so much going on in the world right now. How do you stay encouraged and joyful, through what you're doing, through, these difficult moments?
Good question. I feel like many of the things feel so banal and unimportant, and I don't know. It's a lot of talking. Like we talk so much also at work about all sorts of things that are happening. Like starting with the war in Ukraine, and how do you actually stay sane to believe in everything will be good, and that there is also Russian people that I disagree with what's happening and this and that. So it's all about, like, really talking a lot and figuring that out. I do struggle a lot with, the older I get, with thinking that the thinking and the connecting the dots and the commerciality in thinking creatively, that could be used for something much more important or much more interesting. And even thinking about charity organizations, or like bringing messages across for the bigger picture, or for bigger institutions, or for politics, of like, and I'm talking so much about, like, I don't know if you also have that in the States, but right now there's a lot of left-wing climate activists that I feel very connected with, but there's this new trend that people are gluing themselves on the street to block the street to generate attention. And I'm like thinking that's kind of moments where I start thinking, how could I use my creativity to tap into that, to do something that is actually creating awareness and attention, but not in a negative way? Because I feel like if I go to catch a train and I'm missing the train because one of, let's say, my people that I feel connected with are blocking the street that I could reach my train to go somewhere, I don't feel that connected with them anymore. So I need to really like figure out a way of how could we like people who think that they're doing the right way do things that are inspiring people to join them rather than to not like them anymore, if that makes sense. So I feel like that is a little bit something that I'm thinking about. It doesn't really have to do with what you asked me, because it is difficult to stay focused with our jobs that we are in with. But I mean, there's of course also things that we try to do, like with the Ukraine, when the Ukraine war started, we thought so much about it, if it makes sense to do T-shirts that we sell, and with that money we're gonna support people who lost their houses, and to support them with food and clothing and so on. But then we also like, do we really need to produce T-shirts in order to make people spend money and donate money? But yeah, then we did it with a famous DJ group, and the T-shirts look beautiful, and we actually did generate a lot of money for that. But yeah, it's very difficult, because you really have to think about how can you do it in a very genuine way without that it comes across as a commercial opportunity. It has to stay very true to your heart and to the cause, and not just, oh, we also have to do something for that war, and we also have to mention now this and that. But I feel like also during when the Black Lives Matter movement came up, there was such a crazy learning curve. I feel like for all of us who didn't grow up in a diverse surrounding, or having a lot of people around you that could teach you what it actually means, because we always thought, yeah, where is racism? Where is it actually happening? And then you start learning so much from day to day, and letting then people of color speak, and letting them explain it, and them taking the lead, and us trying to follow as good as possible. And then doing certain things, like, it was all about that, like content-wise on our website, and people were saying, hey, please stay with your sneakers. Why would you talk about all these political issues right now? And my colleagues that are much smarter and they know how to write, I was so incredibly impressed how this has been handled, and how this has been adapted to be a platform that it was all of a sudden not about fashion and streetwear and design anymore. It was more about, we have all these people that follow us, and now it's time to speak about something that's more important than us buying new sneakers. So I feel like that's usually always a great moment to use that media side especially, and everything else has to go a little bit in the background. And it's beautiful to have that luxury to also allow yourself to do that in the end, because, or have the intellect to even do it, and have people around you that have the intellect to do it, because one might be very paralyzed and you don't even know how to articulate what you want to say.